Welcome to Health Scope. My name is Teresa McCabe. I'm a public health educator for Niagara County Department of Health. I work in the Environmental Health Division. Today we have a very timely topic. It's spring and so many of you are going to want to get out and start gardening. Today we're talking about community gardens where people come together and grow things. Our expert gardener today is Tom Lowe, Director of ReNU Niagara from Niagara University. Tom has a laundry list of wonderful credentials. In addition to working full-time at Niagara University, he is the chair of Niagara Beautification Commission. He is the founder and the current vice president of Green Prince Niagara. He's a member of Niagara Falls National Heritage Area. He is a graduate of the Lois Gibbs Fellowship program for Clean Air Coalitions of Western New York. He's a Leadership Niagara graduate of 2014. He's been honored with the Niagara Falls Chamber of Commerce Pride of Niagara Award. Buffalo Business First has listed him as 30 under 30 honorees in 2014. And just recently he received an EPA Environmental Champion Award for 2016. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All of those wonderful honors, and I just am amazed that you get any sleep at all.
I try when I can, yeah.
Well, Tom has a long history of working with the public, assisting in neighborhoods, and getting gardening projects off the ground. So let's start by telling us a little bit about you first.
Sure. I'm Niagara County born and raised. Grew up in Youngstown area, went to Lewiston Porter. After high school, I went to college at SUNY Fredonia, and right after college, I went into the AmeriCorps Vista program, national service, and decided to do my service back home, where many people that go into AmeriCorps, they travel all over the country to do their service, and I saw a need and the value in coming back home to Niagara Falls in the Niagara County area to do my service, and was fortunate to find a placement with ReNU Niagara, and had pretty much been there since.
That's terrific. It's so important. I know we all want to change the world, but we can start by changing just a little bit of right where we live.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that will just continue to grow. Let's tell everybody what ReNU Niagara is.
ReNU Niagara is Niagara University's community outreach arm. We're part of the Levesque Institute for Civic Engagement, which was named after our former president at the university, Father Joseph Levesque, and we're one of 4 or 5 programs underneath the institute, and our role is in the community. We're located off campus in downtown Niagara Falls, and we work with the community to use the resources we have available at the university, namely students, staff, faculty, to bring those resources into the community for community development projects and really for just the general revitalization of Niagara Falls.
It's great. The students at Niagara University are all encouraged to do community service. I was a grad of Niagara University as well, and that is an ideal that they try to instill in all the grads. So I'm imagining the community gardening is a great outlet for a lot of the students who are looking to do community service.
Absolutely. Yeah, anytime I have a group of students to work with, they're outside doing something in a park, a garden, cleaning up an alley, something like that. We always get them outside.
That's great. So let's talk about what is a community garden compared to something that's just in your backyard.
Community garden is a community space, a green space. It can be a vacant lot, it can be a park space, it can be even a median between the streets and the sidewalk. But it's a space where neighbors come together to do gardening. Pretty simple. The phrase is what it is. It's a community coming together to garden.
So in getting started with community gardening, I did a little homework, Tom. I read that it was originally to teach people how to revitalize their communities. I'm sure it does look better instead of having a vacant lot to have
Sure.
nice green growing things. But do you still find that it's mostly a revitalization, or is community gardening, has it evolved into just getting the community members themselves together? Has it become an end in itself?
It's both. I mean, it's obviously a physical revitalization tool. Anyone driving by can see the benefit to turning a vacant, overgrown space that's filled with litter into a beautiful green space that's filled with vegetables or flowers. And then there's obviously the social component as well. It's bringing community together. It's creating ownership. It's empowering community. It's encouraging neighbors to meet neighbors and to get along for a common purpose. So it's got many benefits.
Great. Well, this is Health Scope, so we're going to feature a little bit. We want to talk a bit about the healthy benefits of gardening. It's a great way to get some vitamin D from the sunshine, that's
Absolutely.
for sure. But let's talk about the exercise component and what does gardening do for a person?
Gardening, a lot of people say it's mind, body, and soul. It helps the physical aspect of health. Obviously, if you're growing vegetables and fruits, then you're helping your body. You're reducing diabetes rates, obesity rates, things like that. But there's the physical activity component of it as well. A lot of people might not think that gardening is a physical activity or is exercise, but they say that even washing the dishes is exercise. So the up, the down, the weed pulling, the pulling the wheelbarrow or the bag of weeds around, it's physical activity. So you're putting your body through something, and it's also emotional. It does reduce stress, and there's a lot of studies that prove being out there, devoting your mind to that little plant that you're nurturing can help reduce some stress and ease your mind a little bit as well.
That's true. Even in the garden, even though sometimes it is physical work, but everybody doesn't have to do everything, do they?
Right.
You can have a task to your own abilities and your own interests.
Yep, absolutely. And if you have a disability or for some reason, raised beds can always be used. And we advocate for raised beds anywhere we grow our gardens, so that if there's someone in a wheelchair, for example, that would like to participate in the garden, we put those raised beds usually 23, 24 inches high, so the individual in the wheelchair can use that.
That's great. Let's talk about the mental changes, just waiting for things to grow and seeing, buds and veggies starting to happen, plus what is happening with people mentally when they're gardening.
One of my favorite stories from a garden, and it's in the Highland area of Niagara Falls, is we've worked with youth groups extensively in this area, and each day of the week a different youth group would come out to do the basic tasks, the weeding, the watering, whatever it is. And we worked with a juvenile delinquency center, a reporting center, and these kids are required to go to this reporting center, required to participate in these activities, but when they're out in the garden, you can see the smiles on their faces. You can see that they're actually enjoying the work. And kids that, arguably have some pretty rough circumstances in their lives, and for them to be able to come out and smile and laugh and enjoy and, have a little bit of a water fight maybe with the watering cans, it's really great to see the cheeriness and the emotional turnaround that youth especially can have in a garden.
That's great. That's great. I think a lot of us who do grow home vegetables, there's always that great sense of pride when you pick that first tomato, when you bite into something that you've grown yourself. Do you find that people are more cheerful in general when they have a project that is producing food and when they interact with their neighbors?
I think so. I mean, the social part of interaction. I think everyone enjoys hanging out with friends or family, and so this is an opportunity to maybe meet somebody new. And it does seem like, in general, people are happy to do so, and they're there for a common reason, whether that's a love of gardening or just a love of community, or even a love of their street. They're there for a common reason. They already have that common ground to start from, and generally when people leave, they do have a smile on their face.
So what type of gardens do you start? Do they all have vegetables, or?
We've done a little bit of everything, and we actually say that we have a spectrum of gardens. Everything from what we call a clean and green space, which is just it's a vacant lot that needs some grass, maybe a tree or two, and maybe you install a fence around the perimeter to prevent people from backing in and offloading tires or mattresses or things like that. And then everything up to vegetable gardens, flower gardens. We have an example in Niagara Falls on Walnut Avenue that's called the Kitchen Garden. So it's fruits and vegetables and flowers. It's everything you put in your kitchen. With kids, we like to do pizza gardens, for example.
Oh, what a great idea.
Everything, all the toppings you can put on a piece of pizza, and that obviously is a connection from healthy foods, to healthy foods for the youth, seeing pizza or a taco garden, for example.
And using fresh herbs is so different than using something that's dried in a bottle. The flavor is so great.
Absolutely.
That's great. So who's funding these projects, Tom? I mean, people might say, gee, that's a great idea, and there's a vacant lot on my street, but who's funding them?
We get funding from a couple different sources. So the work we've done in Highland, back in 2009, we received funding from the East Hill Foundation out of Niagara County. So they funded what was called the Highland Greenfields Project, which included the Highland Community Vegetable Garden at Kalfas Magnet School. We've also received funding through the City of Niagara Falls through their Community Development Block Grant process from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We received funding to actually start Greenprint Niagara as an organization, and then that funding was used to also support the starting of several community gardens in the city.
And how are the locations chosen? Do you personally scout these out? Do people come to you and say, gee, there's a space available on my street and I already know we have a few people interested? I mean, how does that
Yeah, it's a little bit of both.
find?
We have a general idea, and we have our kind of top 10 priority gardens, in spaces that we think could really get some work or attention, right away. But we also, if block clubs approach us, obviously they have an interest in a certain neighborhood, a certain area of the city. So we work with the city's planning department to identify spaces within that neighborhood that would work for their specific purposes. But it has been a little bit of both. We're very aware there's a couple hundred city-owned vacant lots in the city of Niagara Falls, and we know where they are. But we also know that residents have their eye on something and or come to us with a notion of what they want to do.
Well, I know that ReNU is based in revitalizing Niagara Falls. Are there other groups throughout the county that are involved in community gardening?
Absolutely, and just in Lockport, for example, there's an organization called Imagine Community Gardens, which, from what I understand, connects rural churches with urban churches to grow the food in kind of the rural outlying areas of the county, but to provide them to the urban areas and the urban parishioners that might not have access to fresh food like that.
How do you get people involved? Is it a little bit of Tom Sawyer whitewashing the fence? Do you put a couple of students out there having fun and people start coming out to get curious, or do you paper the neighborhood with flyers? What do you do?
We do everything that we can to get people involved, and anyone that does any type of community organizing knows it's a multimodal approach. So we outreach, we have presentations, we'll go to the block club meetings to let them know what we offer. And our benefits, we offer group insurance, health insurance to cover the gardeners on the lots, and we have a lease with the city so that it makes it all legal. So we'll use those as our pitch. Medical insurance is huge. Having liability insurance in case a volunteer gets hurt is huge. So we outreach, but we use our connections with other organizations to share our message as well. But with everything, it's a challenge to get people involved, and gardening can become a niche as well. So someone might see a community gardening opportunity and think, well, I don't want to garden, which is what I thought 20 years ago. I don't want to garden. But once they actually get out there, and we'll show it, like you said, we'll put some kids out there with smiles on their faces and show that this is really an awesome and fun opportunity.
That's great. That's so great, because there's just a joy in it. There's a joy, there's the anticipation, and I'm glad that you're getting so many people. We're going to take this in a slightly different area now. I work in environmental health. Part of our mission in environmental health is to reduce lead poisoning and to keep a healthy environment for people in the world around them. I know you use raised beds, and that's really important. You want to tell people why you use raised beds and you're not actually digging in the ground. It also makes it easy. If you don't have a rototiller, you don't have to dig up the soil and remove the grass clods, right?
And easier on the back, too.
Easier on the back. Let's talk about raised beds and why they are preferred.
Well, in most Northeast cities, it's all post-industrial, and in many areas of Niagara Falls, there was factories. Industry was present, and anyone that knows the history of Niagara Falls knows that. Industry's gone away, vacant lots appear, but we don't necessarily know what's underneath the grass. So we could do testing, but testing is costly. It's very expensive and a very long process at times. So we advocate to just go up. We build at least 18 inches up with the raised beds, either wood or other materials. We do line the boxes often to just provide an extra barrier, a plastic barrier typically, but just go up to not even chance it. We don't want you producing food in contaminated soil and then eating that, and obviously you can't eat even a raw vegetable out of contaminated soil. It's just too dangerous. So just go up. It's easier, like you said. There's so many benefits, but environmental is the chief one.
And much easier on the back. In environmental health, we also recommend for those of you who like to grow tomatoes, before you get your tomatoes in, if you live in an older home, it was built before 1978, and you have a problem with peeling or chipping paint, don't grow the tomatoes next to the house, because those lead paint chips fall into the soil, and you're getting a nice healthy tomato that is now possibly laced with lead. So these raised garden beds and container gardening is much better.
Absolutely.
Your beds remind me of Fred Bartholomew's square foot gardening. Very efficient. Do you want to tell people why the raised beds and that format rather than row gardening works better?
Yeah, you know, and the Kalfas garden, for example, is not square foot gardening. It's row gardening, and it's the beds that are 3 feet tall, 3 feet wide, and 16 feet long, which, as we found over time, that's not ideal. The ideal through square foot gardening is a 4x4, 4 foot by 4 foot bed. And the reason they say that is you and I could be on either side of the bed and be able to reach to the other side of the
middle,
bed.
absolutely.
You know, we couldn't stand on the end of a 16-foot bed and reach all the way to the other side. More than that, square foot gardening would break that 4 foot bed, 4x4 bed, into 1 foot squares. And within those 1 foot squares, there's even templates that you can get online that have holes in them. So you'll have a lettuce template, for example. You lay that template in the 1 foot square, and no, there's only one circle for the lettuce because you can only grow 1 head of lettuce in a 1 square foot. But you could grow 16 carrot seeds in a 1 square foot. So what it does is it allows you to better use the space and the resources that you have, the dirt, the water, and even your time. You know, it does help with all those resources.
It's a great idea. You're not watering the pathways. You're not stepping